Hey guys, Jeff here at DC Sports Training, and today's video is part 2 of why we take a brain-based approach with our clients. Anyone who's going through exercise science, physiology, health class, gym class, you're probably really familiar with pyramid graphs for nutrition, for physical fitness, for exercise selection, transfer of training. Pyramid graphs are all over our industry, and they do a great job of explaining the importance of a base. And if we don't have that foundation, the pyramid's not going to be able to grow up very high. And in the neurological development realm, there's a couple pyramids that I've come across that have really shifted my view on how I not only work with young athletes, but high school, college, professional athletes, how I work with my adults, and how I even view parenting. The first graph I came across a couple of years ago showing the importance of primitive reflexes. And at the time, I was taking some therapy courses called Primal Reflex Release Techniques. And in the course, they address primitive reflexes and how to offset them and their role with pain. But we don't really get into the deep neurological reasoning for them, what the purposes of are, and where they fall on a neurological development graph. So when I saw this, I was just like, oh, okay, that really piqued my interest because, as you can see, if we don't have those kind of solidified, we're not going to have great sensory motor, postural reflexes, cognitive function, and executive function, right? And a lot of times I get parents in here all the time complaining about postural issues with their kids. The kids are rounded shoulders, rounded back, kyphotic, all this. Well, it could be very well related to the fact that they don't have their primitive reflexes integrated. And anyone unfamiliar with primitive reflexes, they are the software that we're born with that helps us maneuver through the birth canal and helps us survive the first year or two of life. And if they're not integrated, and the way they get integrated is through just repetitive use, constant triggering of the reflexes through sensory integration, through touching, feeling, learning to creep, learning to crawl, things like that, then they remain intact. And unfortunately, if they still remain unintegrated, that's going to inhibit our ability to have postural reflexes, cognitive function, executive function. So people who get labeled with learning disabilities, behavior issues, higher cognitive things, they get labeled with these certain things. Well, it could very well be actually that they just have unintegrated primitive reflexes, right? I've had many athletes come in here labeled with ADHD, and then when we test them, we find out that they have like 3 or 4 primitive reflexes still retained. And it's not to say that they don't have ADHD, but a lot of times it's due to these reflexes that present themselves as ADHD. So for instance, the spinal galant reflex, which is where you rub the side of the spine, and if the athlete is ticklish, they'll flinch. Well, a lot of times when they wear clothes, when they're sitting, they can't necessarily sit still because they're always having this reflex triggered, and that's going to make it seem like they just can't pay attention because they're always moving, right? So that's just one example. About a year and a half ago, I was introduced to Matt Belay of Institute of Innovation and Performance, who then introduced me to this pyramid, the Pyramid of Learning, which was developed in 1996 by Williams and Schnellenberg, which proposes that learning is incremental and that a child's sensory integration plays a huge role in their development. And it helps explain in which the body organizes input from the world in which we live to then develop the higher cognitive functions, right? So a lot of times I'll get athletes with behavior issues, anxiety issues, eye tracking issues. Anyone familiar with what we do here? We do a lot for the visual system and doing a lot of eye tracking. And I would lie to you to say I batted 1,000 with improving all my athletes' performance in everything, right? We have failures here. And it's the failures that keep me deep diving, really trying to find more. And this pyramid has really introduced me to the deeper reasoning behind it, right? There's a great quote that I heard that neurology is very orderly, and if we are unable to figure it out, then it's our fault, right? I just love that quote because what this graph now gives me is an orderly system in which to view things. And the IP Institute in the course, which I'm not going to turn this video into, does a fantastic job of explaining the orderly process in which we develop and the importance of not skipping steps. Neurological development and milestones as we're born are important. They're there for a reason. And so for my son, for instance, many of you may have seen the video I've done with him. He's 6 years old. He had eye tracking issues, right? And I'm a coach. I just want to go out back and play with my son, play catch with him. And a lot of times he wasn't able to catch. He just let the ball fall. He'd pick it up and throw it, but he just wouldn't want to catch it. So I'm working on eye exercises. We're doing all types of saccades and fixations and convergence and divergent stuff, and nothing seemed to help. And then I started deep diving into perimeter reflexes. I introduced to this, and I started doing some perimeter reflex integration. You know, the asymmetric tonic neck reflex, for instance, doesn't allow kids to have great convergence, doesn't allow them to cross the midline, right? It's going to present itself as hand-eye coordination issues. The TLR, the tonic neck labyrinthi reflex is going to cause vestibular issues. Anytime they tilt their head back, they're going to be off balance. And, you know, he also had some vestibulo-ocular reflex issues where he could not keep his eyes focused as he turned his head. So we started working on those things. And next thing you know, his ocular motor control and his visual spatial perceptions get 100 times better, and he's now able to play catch with me no problem. So just to backtrack a little bit and to hopefully point out that a lot of times we work on symptoms. We work on, you know, as coaches, as teachers, as educators, as parents, we're addressing symptoms. But this pyramid and looking at neurological development gives an orderly reason now on, hey, maybe those issues are due to these things much lower down, right? And we may not know we have these issues until we look at these issues. So for instance, the vestibular system plays a huge role in regulating emotions and sympathetic nervous system, right? And balance, and just it also plays into proprioception, right? And the vestibular system is always linked with anxiety. So I can't tell you how much it breaks my heart and how sad it's been these last year and a half with the amount of athletes that I get that come in here that have high anxiety issues. And it really kills me. 11, 12, 13-year-olds with high anxiety issues. And then all of a sudden I test their vestibular system, and I mean they can't even stand on one leg. Right? They can't stand in a tandem position with their eyes closed for more than 10 seconds. Right? They can't, I have one athlete that didn't even know, so I put him in a chair to spin him, and he doesn't even know what direction I was spinning him in. Right? And oftentimes these either go just ignored, right? Kids will say, oh, well, I get car sick, or I don't like, roller coasters, or I don't like jumping on trampolines, or whatever it is. And parents or doctors are just like, okay, whatever. Or they're just, ignored. The kids don't necessarily, they think it's more normal than it is, and they're just kind of like, yeah, well, whatever. But it has a huge effect on regulation, emotion, and sympathetic system. So to tie it into how I parent, and a quick little story, my son one morning got a little mouthy with his mother and I, and we sent him up to his room, and he was quite upset with us. And my wife, being the kind, loving woman that she is, went upstairs to talk to him, to reason with him, to try to get him to understand what he did was wrong and why. And as soon as I walk in the room, the very first thing I noticed were his pupils. They were huge. My son's pupils, he looked like a cat on catnip, which told me right away that he was sympathetic dominant. So I had to get my wife to, hey, sweetheart, look at his eyes right now. He either wants to run or he wants to fight us right now, but he's not reasoning. He's not going to listen to us. Let's try to calm him down and down-regulate his autonomic system, and let's then talk to him and try to reason, right? So what we did was we put on some essential oils under his collar, we put on some blue light with some tonics, and we put on some sound, and we just had him do some breathing in the room for like 5 minutes. Came back, his pupils were better, and we were able to talk to him. And now please don't take this as I'm saying I know everything about parenting and I'm the best parent, but this is just something I've learned from the IP Institute and other people, Dr. Robert Melillo, and those smarter than I, as far as things to look for now and to address. So rather than addressing symptoms of behavior issues and let's just talk to him, I know he had some things going on, his vestibular system. So there's certain exercises we'll do to downregulate and work on that. And I know with the fear-moral reflex, fear paralysis reflex, that's triggered when he feels like he's when he's scared or when he's got that sympathetic nervous system, he's not listening. So we have to do exercises to get that fully integrated. We got to do more sensory and tactile things to get that integrated. So my hope with this video was to show you guys and teach you, this pyramid, introduce you to that, and hopefully maybe if I've shifted one person's lens out there as how to look at things, then I've done my job, because this has been a game-changing thing for me and in my practice, in my parenting, in my life. I hope It helps, and again, neurology is very orderly. This does a great job of giving an order and a process in which to look at, and yeah, stay tuned for part 3, guys. Thanks.